Hello everybody and welcome back to Kerbal Space Program, where apparently game capture isn't working. That is... oh, there we go. Okay, so I was going to restart the episode and have you not see that, but it appears to be working now, so all is good. Now, I want to talk a little bit about the Jool Gatherer, right? So let's hop into the spaceplane hangar, and we've got a fundamental issue here. The gas scooper. So I've made a couple of changes off camera. These are now properly extended. And actually, let me, just because of the ReStock bug, let me hop into cheats here and turn on unbreakable joints and no crash damage for now. That'll be fine. I've also, on the suggestion of a commenter whose name I really should have looked up before I started this episode, let's see here, Sagittarius A, commented and recommended that we use the Whiplash jet engine here, which we definitely do have. I apologize that I didn't look up your name beforehand, but here we are. Now, there is a small problem here, and that problem is that we have more liquid fuel than we can burn before this Whiplash runs out. And that's because of our limited amount of oxidizer combined with these liquid-fueled engines. So the liquid-fueled engines aren't a problem. Neither are the Whiplashes, and the Whiplashes, according to my earlier testing, work pretty great, honestly. It was a great suggestion, and I appreciate that. However, we're carrying too much liquid fuel for our amount of oxidizer. How much liquid fuel do we need to ditch? Well, actually, I want to run a test and verify the numbers that I got before. I also don't remember what those numbers were. I'm a professional, guys. I'm very professional. Okay, there is another fundamental problem here, though, and that problem is power flow. Under ideal scenarios, we need a minimum of 70 energy generation, technically 69.92 energy generation per second, to run our 8 Dawn electric propulsion engines. And that's fine here over Kerbal. These Gigantors, I popped this over to Jool to simulate power flow. They are not enough. They generate approximately 1 power flow over Jool compared to the 25 over Kerbal. Now, I knew that there would be drop-off going out that way. I didn't realize it would be quite that extensive. So that means, in theory, we would need 60 Gigantors. That's an insane, or actually we'd need like 70 Gigantors. That's an insane number of Gigantors. So that's a non-viable system, right? Unfortunately, we have another fundamental issue here. And that other fundamental issue is that RTGs are unlikely to work either. Even if we had the science, which we currently don't, even if we had the science, these generate 0.8 electric charge per second. If we take 69.92 and divide that by 0.8, and apparently, yeah, that would happen. Let's go back into this view. That means that we need a grand total of 87.4 RTGs. Now, that's 0.08 tons, so we'll multiply that by... let me do it this way. I'll just click the numbers in. 0.08. That means that that is going to be nearly 7 tons of RTGs alone, if we want to power this like that. That's a lot of weight. I mean, wait, is this a VAB? This is a VAB. I meant to go into the spaceplane hangar. That's a lot of weight of just power generation. I want to know how heavy our current Gigantors are. But this, I think, means that overall, us being powered by 8 of these Dawn electric propulsion engines is overly ambitious. So, these Gigantors, how heavy is each Gigantor? 0.3 tons. So that's a lot heavier for almost the same generation over Jool. So Gigantors are right out. We're going to keep these photovoltaic panels as backups. The question is, how are we going to get RTGs on here? Well, we don't have the technology right now. So that is something that we will need to consider and probably run like a Duna mission or something to get that technology. So we ditch those. That does remove roughly a ton of solar panels. We're going to run out of velocity extremely quickly here. Or rather, electricity with our current setup. So let's go ahead and remove these decouplers temporarily. And I think we need to cut our Dawn electric propulsion engines by a dramatic amount. So each one of these takes up how much power? That is 8.74 per second. Okay. So that means we'll need like 12 RTGs per engine. Alternatively, like 10 Gigantors per engine. That's an absurd number of Gigantors. The RTGs is maybe a little bit more manageable. Let's bring this down to single. Okay, so we'll do that. I do want to move our wings slightly forward. There we go. And, of course, this looks slightly ridiculous. Should we go to nuclear engines? I mean, these are too big, obviously. We would need to go with the nerves if we wanted to do it this way. So, I mean, that would go in like that. Hang on a moment. Is it just me, or is this only marginally ridiculous? I mean, no, that's not going to work. It would, though. It almost would work, I guess. So that goes out there like that. So, I mean, that would theoretically function. If we did this, we're not going to have a lot of thrust in comparison. And I don't think it's a great concept overall. So if we were to put the vectors and decouplers back here, I mean, our thrust to weight's going to be incredibly low, right? But maybe that's okay. Now, our power generation here is still going to be a major issue. But ditching those Gigantors does mean we no longer care about that. And that's a big deal to me. Now, we're going to get barely any power flow from these photovoltaic panels when we're out at Jool, but I'm still going to move them to be around here, and we'll just move them up a little bit. We'll try to turn off the snapping and just position them a little bit lower like so, and then position them inward like this. Kind of like that, except not really at all. Maybe placing them on the actual fuselage like this would be slightly better. And then just move them inward. We would want this to be in local space. Move this inward to be about there. Like that. Maybe. That might work. So we've definitely dropped weight here. The next question that I have is, how long will these batteries hold out? We've got 2,000 electric charge here. We know that we draw 8.74 per second. So let me just do 2,000 divided by 8.74. So that'll hold out for 228.8 seconds of burn. Divide that by 60 to put that into minutes. That's about 4 minutes of burn time that we have there before we have to very slowly recharge from these photovoltaic panels. At this thrust to weight, 4 minutes of burn time is going to be exceptionally low. Now that assumes we're not taking in power through these photovoltaic panels, which isn't necessarily true. How much power do these XL photovoltaic panels actually give? Okay, 2.8 per second. it's not great. I suppose we could just put on the side-mounted Gigantors. I want it to be like that. The side-mounted Gigantors like this for now. And this would be fine for operating in Kerbin area. Kerbin space. Once we go out to Jool, this will not be fine. We're not going to have the power flow needed. It'll help the power flow, certainly, but we should assume that this is going to be generating about 0.1 power per second, and these will be generating about 1 power per second. So overall, we're going to be having somewhere on the order of 2.2 power per second from all of this out at Jool. It's a bit rough, there's no doubt about that. But let's go ahead and give this a test with the Whiplash. I want to show how that's going. It's going quite well, actually. However, I do want to burn the Vectors and the Whiplash simultaneously, because I do not want to run out of liquid fuel before we run out of Oxidizer. We're going to run out of Oxidizer before we run out of liquid fuel, because we need to check to see how much liquid fuel we need to remove from this craft. I can tell you right now, we can go ahead and eliminate the fuel from this nose. The wing fuel, we're going to eliminate some of it, but we'll find out how much. Okay, let's go ahead and launch this. And that power issue, I feel like, will be solvable. I wish there were larger electric propulsion engines, rather than having to cluster them like that. That would be not necessarily less power per second, would it be? I don't know, I'd have to think about it. At any rate, we can retract these solar panels. And we have potential detachment issues here that will expose themselves with this flight, shall we say. Let's check our staging. Yes, this all looks good. You'll notice that our SRBs are in stage 2 now. We are oxidizer deprived in our vectors. I didn't notice that before. Ah, right. Our external fuel ducts are disconnected because I removed those. Let's hop back to the spaceplane hangar and fix our external fuel ducts. So those come from right where they're at over to, ideally, up here somewhere. We want this in mirrored mode. Like, stop and mirror. Okay, up to about here would be perfect. No? Okay. Here? No? Okay. It's just a matter of getting it to a position where it will actually get fuel in. There. That will work, I believe. Let's give this a go. We are going to have leftover fuel, and power continues to be a concern. Now, we could theoretically use that leftover liquid fuel in fuel cells. However, fuel cells require oxidizer. So that's not a great solution, if you ask me. We're going to throttle up, turn SAS off, retract our Gigantors due to the bug, which we no longer have to worry about crash damage for, and off we go. Now, there's a pretty big shimmy that we pick up here. You can see it already starting up a little bit. Before we take off, there's a good side-to-side shimmy that I do not like. And it might be better off if we just don't have any SAS for that. Yeah, there's that shimmy. See that? That is insane, right? Okay, this is a lot worse attitude than I had last time when I took off. Flame out because of air deprival because of our attitude. So I'm going to try that launch again, this time with the SAS on. I feel like that was a pretty big mistake. I was checking to see if the SAS was causing that pre-takeoff shimmy. It does not appear to be. So let's just go ahead and try this again with SAS on. And the question is, what can we actually do about that pre-takeoff shimmy? The answer is, I'm not sure that we can do a whole heck of a lot. So we're going to start going side to side here on the yaw in a moment. Yep, there it goes, the yaw going side to side. And we lift off, and that's definitely much, much better on the lift off. We'll hold up at about 45 degrees. I'm just trying to get our prograde to going at 45 degrees here. Kinda close. Kinda close. It's not wanting to sit at 45. Now, I have changed our ascent trajectory here from my previous off-camera attempt. Or rather, our ascent profile. So what we're doing here is we're just chilling. And we're going to run with the vectors and the whiplashes for right now. Until we reach about 20 kilometers. And we're just going to try to hold up there. And then our SRBs will kick in. So you'll notice we are burning our liquid fuel faster than we're burning our oxidizer. That is expected. Our oxidizer is already burned out of both of these outside tanks. That's definitely something that is good to note. We're at 15 kilometers now. We're going to start seeing flame out on these whiplashes soon. You can see the thrust is dropping. Once we drop below 1.66, or rather 1.6, that's when I'm going to kick in those SRBs. Now we're carrying more than we have to here. I'm mostly just trialing this staging timings. We're burning out our oxygen on the inners now. So I think we're carrying more weight than we need to. We need to rework these timings, for sure. Next SRBs. At this point, we could completely drop this inner stage. It is useless to us. So that's definitely something that is good to know. You can see here our apoapsis is actually super high. And I wanted to cut our engines there, but that caused this tumble. Now we're just going to let those SRBs burn off, and then we're going to try to make our way over to prograde completely without any sort of intervention from the engines. We should be capable of getting that back under control, but this is another one of those timing things that we need to work on. So we'll just do something kind of like this to get us into space, something like that-ish. And that's okay. Burn time of 4 days? Yikes. Okay. I don't necessarily think that's accurate, but this tumble is definitely not helping. We can ditch both of these, though. And that is something that we will definitely do. And we'll make our way over to the maneuver node. Try to roll this a little bit. And, I mean, we're not going to make it into orbit here, and that's because we were carrying useless weight. The question is, how much extra liquid fuel do we have here? And we'll find that out soon enough. There we go. We're oxidizer deprived now, and we stage this, and yeah, this is going to take forever to get us anywhere. 36 minutes. We're not going to make it into orbit with this, but that's because mostly we were carrying a lot of useless weight. We can extend these solar panels. The real question here is, how much excess fuel did we have? 411. And that should be not necessarily always the same. Yeah, that's not necessarily going to always be the same. It's going to depend on how much we burn without having the jet engine flame out. So that's what's going to be complicated here. So we can see here we have 411 excess liquid fuel. I mean, we're not going to make it into orbit at this point with this ion propulsion. 0.04 thrust to weight ratio. It's a very, very low thrust to weight, and we knew that when we set this up. There's another option here. And that option is to use nuclear fuel, which is just liquid fuel. Or we could try to do a hybrid system, where we have both liquid, or we have nuclear fuel for this stage here to burn out the remaining fuel. And then we have the electric propulsions after that. Now that's an interesting concept. So we revert this back. I definitely want to burn the SRBs earlier. For sure. So this is going to become quite a lot longer here. The idea is as follows. We put in Nerve atomic rocket motors here. I'm very concerned about our takeoff. We put in a TD-12 there. And then we put these vectors here. We enable crossfeed here. And stage 6, the question is, does this actually work? I think it does. The real question is, how exactly is this going to work in terms of the takeoff? When we go nose up, I think that we're going to have a big, big issue. Specifically, that issue is going to be these engines are going to go away. And possibly these ones too. Let's give it a go. But I don't think that these engines survive. I really, really don't. Let's see what we've got here. It's going to be very interesting. I'm also interested to see if we've got fuel flow to that, to these engines here. A lot of wiggling in this joint. That's not necessarily good to see. We do not have fuel flow. Or at least we don't have oxidizer flow. So what happens if we try to take off with just the jet engines here? I think the jet engines do get us off the ground. Maybe all the way at the end of the runway. This is a slow acceleration, but that's okay. It would be much faster with these vectors online. How much fuel are we burning here? Okay, that's a good amount of fuel margin then. So here comes the end of the runway. Yeah, not enough speed there. Okay, so we definitely learned a couple of things. First off, we learned that it turns out that it's helpful if your engines have fuel flow. Who would have thought? So we're going to run another pair of fuel lines in mirror symmetry mode. Ideally, all the way out to here. We also would like to have some stability here. So I'm going to run... This is so ridiculous looking. I'm going to run a strut connector from here to... That's not going to work. Okay, we'll run it from perhaps here to here. Yeah, that's not going to allow it. Perhaps from here to here. Yes, that will work. Okay. Let's see how that goes. The other major question is, when do we want to fire up the SRBs? The correct timing on that is basically as soon as we're in the air, I feel like. Yeah, now we have flow there. Excellent. We're going to want to retract our solar panels. There we go. Okay, so when we take off, I'm expecting these engines to go away. Yep, that's exactly what happened. And now we don't have really what we need here. So yeah, that's going to go kaboom. In fact, let's just let it happen. Boom. Fantastic. Okay, so as expected, we are far too long in the engine section here with this setup. Far too long. However, there is something we could potentially do about it. We ditch this. We ditch these. We actually might want to get rid of this SRB, although it's what's attached here, so that's going to be a little bit more complicated. Replace this with the atomic rocket motor. We'd need to flow fuel in from the wings, but that's okay. We can do that. Have the atomic rocket motor here, and then have the vectors instead be located right where they were before, right there. That does mean that we can ditch this strut. So let's go ahead and remove this fuel tank here, and then this hammer SRB. And I'm going to replace that with the fuel tank, like so. We'll have to change the positioning on it, obviously. Yeah, we're going to have to move this up pretty dramatically. And in fact, I'd like to move it all the way up there. I think we're going to change where the actual mounting point is here. So we'll grab this guy right here, if I can. Yes. No. That was not the one I wanted. This guy. And we'll move it up to be approximately there. We've already got fuel flow coming in from the wings, or rather going out to the wings. I think I'm going to rerun this fuel line. And I want to run that from up here. Nope, I don't want to grab that. I want to grab this guy from up here somewhere, like here, to here, flowing inward. Okay, and then these are connected up. And then we would need this to connect inward, like so. And then these connect into the fuselage. Now, the primary issue here is that these need to be switched. At least in the staging. So these detach first, that's good. And then those fire, but they can probably fire a little higher up. Like, this needs to be flipped here, for sure. And then we can fire this when we detach the jet engines. That means that the jet engines are in flame out at that point, right? In theory. And then this can be used to burn any remaining liquid fuel after we've burned all the oxidizer. And really, maybe we would want to wait to fire these until, like, up here. And then do this up here like so. So the staging would be that we fire the whiplash and the vectors, and then we fire the hammer solid fuel booster, and we detach that after. Then we detach the jet engines and the inner stage there. Now we're going to be carrying this tank. It will be empty. We'll be carrying this tank for a while for our atomic rocket motors. And maybe that's okay. Then we detach our vectors and fire up our atomic rocket motors and our Dawn. I actually think that we're going to fire our Dawn after we detach the atomic rocket motors. Something along those lines. Okay. I also think that we should probably consider moving this entire assembly over this way, just a tiny smidgen there, like that. Okay, this is quite a Franken contraption here. There's no doubt about that. Quite a Franken contraption indeed. This is a terrible strut that is connected to our Gigantor. I hate it. Let's go ahead and fix that. Like that. There we go. Anything else major? I mean, this fuel duct is pretty dumb. Let's take that and place it about like that. Sure. And I do want to put the liquid fuel in up here. Make sure that we have full liquid fuel absolutely everywhere we can. Sounds good. It is, however, time to put a cut in here, so I'm going to go ahead and do that. And next episode, we are going to see if we can get this thing into space. You can leave your offerings to the engagement gods in the form of likes, comments, subscribes, and bell ringings, and I will see you all next time.